Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is connect to a device. So there's several different ways you can do this. You can use our built-in OPC server and drivers to connect to a device, or maybe you have another OPC server you want to use, something like Kepware or Matricon or any other OPC server you out there you can use with our system, and I'll show you how to connect those as well. So I'm on step 2 here, so I'll go ahead and connect to a device. And what you simply do is, if you're using one of these devices, Allen Bradley, Modbus, or Siemens, that's going to be coming out with 7.2.6 later on this week. But what you do is you just go ahead and choose your device. So say, for example, if I'm connecting to an Allen Bradley Ethernet device here, I do have some of these on my network. You go ahead and name the device. So I'll just call this Micro. And then you just put in the IP address. So where is it located on your network? So mine happens to be at 10.20.7.77. So you can connect to as many different devices as you want that way. So if you don't have a device to connect to and you just want to use a simulator, I would recommend using this generic simulator that has some good information to some live data coming through to play around with. And then also our TCP and UDP drivers are down here. Now if you're using another OPC server, what you would do is you'd go down here to OPC connections, choose servers, so there's the built-in one, and then if you want to use another one, I happen to have Kepware on my computer, and it's actually the DA version here. So I would go ahead and choose that, or if it's another server, the only information you need to know is the PROG ID, and that's usually available, readily available in your OPC server software. So that comes in, and then you can go ahead and connect to another OPC server. So it's really that easy. So there's my OPC servers, and there's my device, and I could make several other connections if I wanted to. And then the next thing you're going to want to do is connect to a database. So I made that test database earlier with MySQL. So I'm just going to connect to that. And these are the drivers that Ignition comes with. So I'm going to use this MySQL connector. And I'm going to name the connection test. And then you just tell Ignition where it's located. So your database can be sitting anywhere on the network. So since I said it was a MySQL database, it automatically put in this connection here. It is on my computer, so that's why it says localhost. This is a default MySQL port right there. And my database is called test. So I'll just kind of leave that as it is. And then the username and password for the database. So the username, the default username and password when you're using MySQL databases is username root and then password MySQL. So that's how you would go about making a database connection, and you can make connections to all sorts of different databases, multiple MySQL databases, SQL Server, whatever you want there. So if we go back here, we've done that, and then we can go ahead and launch the designer here. So the designer and the clients launch using that technology I told you about earlier, which is called Java Web Start, and it's going to launch from this web page right here. So we don't have any projects installed yet, so I'm just going to create a new project. When you're playing with our software, username is always admin, and then password is always password until you decide to change it. Right, so I'll just create a new project, and I'll call that test. Okay, so this is the designer, and like I said, this looks like any other application on your computer. If you want to, you can even go and close your browser page, and this will still be on your computer no matter where you are on the network, whether you have Ignition installed on that computer or not. So this is a part of the system called the SQL Bridge, and this is basically your transaction manager. You can make just a historical group just for purely data logging. You can make a standard group, store procedures group. Basically the way it works is you can pull in data coming from your device or devices or other OPC servers. So say, for example, I go to this Micrologics and I want to take some of these tags, and maybe I want to do something really simple, like every 3 seconds I want to pull data from the OPC server into the database. And you have some other options here, by the way, for bidirectional updates. And then you choose which database you want that to go into. And that database is empty, remember? So I'll just have it automatically create a table for me, and I'll name the table Table 1. And I want it to store a time and date stamp. You can also do things like you can have triggers. So this is where you would tell Ignition which tags to watch out for. If a certain tag changes, then you want to update the group or execute this group on a trigger, and you can choose your trigger item and then your conditions down here. But I'll just kind of keep it simple. So I'll just start up the group, enable it, and then save it. And then at the bottom here, it'll give you some information like the last execution, the last trigger, if any, total execution. So you should see this number going up every 3 seconds. And say I want to look at the data in the database, I just go to the right of the table here to this button, and it pulls up my query browser. And if I hit auto refresh here, you'll see the data going in every 3 seconds. So it automatically puts in an index for you, and then there's the time and date stamp that I had requested. It's using the address names here as your column names. If you want to change that, it's really simple to do. You just go over here to your tag, and then you can edit it. And you can see the target type here is a database field, and then the target name. So you can change that if you want, but it'll still tell you where it's coming from, the path here. You can also do some scaling on it if you wanted to, or you can do a digital or analog alert. So you just fill out your alerts here. And then your notification settings, and you can actually send out alerts to an email distribution group, or you can send text messages, but the text messages are via email. So for example, it would be, a phone number at verizon.net or something like that. So you can send out email and text message alerts. You can also create other action items using expressions or SQL queries. So that's when you can basically, say you're using expression, you can pull in a couple tags and do some kind of mathematical or logical expression or function in here. And then you can do something based on that tag, or you can alert based on that tag, or whatever you want. So that's the SQL bridge, and you can make as many different groups as you want. And remember, the groups are just like islands of data, so you can mix and match tags, and they basically, each group will have a different form of logic. The other part of the system is a vision module. So this is where you can create all of your screens, and that's really simple to do using something called SQL tags. So what I'll do here is I'll go to View and then OPC Browser. So as soon as I made those connections earlier in the gateway, it allows me to do something like this. So there's my Micrologics, and I can just pull in a whole tag of I/O, or maybe my other OPC server here for Kepware. I could do the same thing. Maybe I can grab all of these tags and pull them in here. So you can grab individual tags or whole folders. And once you do that, say N7 here, you get your live values. And if you want to present that on the screen, so maybe N70 is coming from a tank level. So what you can do is maybe do an LED display up here. And then all I'm doing is dragging and dropping on the screen. And you can represent that as a tank, for example. Maybe this is a temperature gauge. So you can pull that in and say LED display. And you can use all the displays up here. So these are all your inputs, buttons, displays, tables, charts, calendars, shapes, miscellaneous. So you have, and then this is for the reporting module. So you have a lot of different components here. So another way to design is maybe pull in a display first. Just pull in a couple of these. And then maybe you can go back and then you can drag these tags on top to bind them. So that's real-time status stuff, and control is pretty simple to do as well. Like maybe this is an HOA switch here, so you could just drag that on, and maybe I'll do multi-state indicator. And then maybe I'll go to control and I'll do multi-state button. So handoff auto. So there's my HOA switch. Let me turn my communications to read-write instead of read-only. So I can write back to a device. This button toggles between display and preview mode. So if I hit that, I can see how my objects behave. So you can see that it goes off. And then you should see this changing also. Hand is 2, off is 0, and then auto is 1, and so forth. Trending is also very simple, so I could easily grab some values here, and all I do is right click and hit edit. And this uses a technology called SQL Tags History, and it's just a very simple way of creating a trend. Once you hit apply here, what it does is it actually creates tables in this database here that are specifically for trending. So all of the tables are done for you, and they're partitioned to make it run very efficiently. So once these have these little scroll buttons here, it means they're ready collecting the data for trending. So I can go to my charts maybe and pick this first one, which is an easy chart. So this has a lot of built-in features. It also will run historical, manual, or real-time. So say I put it on real-time and I want to trend these. I just highlight them and I drag them over. And there's my trend. So that's a really simple screen, and what I'll do is I'll save it and then I'll launch it as a client. So we can see what that looks like. So you also get to see the client, which launches the same way as the designer. So you can either launch from the designer, or you can have a shortcut on your desktop, or you can launch straight from the gateway. Okay, so here's my client, and this real-time trending here comes with some built-in features. Like you could do zoom, pan, mark, X-trace to see like what the values were at what time. The user can come in here and choose which items they want to trend. They can print this out, or they can actually export these values to an Excel spreadsheet. So it's a very simple screen there. Also, in terms of making an update to your project, you can actually make that very simple by just, okay, let me just clear up my screen here. Oh, there's my Kepler. Alright, so there's my client, and here's my designer. So if I want to make a change to in my client, maybe I will, I'll just put a button on here. So maybe I'll just add a button right here, just a really simple change. So there's my button. I make some kind of change to the system, and then once I hit save, it'll propagate the changes all out to the clients on the network. That's all you need to do. You press one button, and everybody gets the change on the system. So there's my new button. You can either have the change come in automatically, or you could require the user to click on that screen above, and by default that's what we do, because you want the user to acknowledge that there was a change. So, but there's a couple different ways you can do that. There's also some other examples on our website where you can see some built projects.